A Great Argead Saga Alexein, Alexander the Great. Volume 1, Telesias, The War Dance. By Macaulay. A new episode every single day. Episode 08, Half-Blood Prince, The Cold Calculus. Inside Queen Mother Eurydice's private chambers, the air was stagnant, heavy with the cloying scent of cedar that failed to mask the sharp iron tang of blood clinging to the limestone walls. Outside, the rhythmic, guttural wailing of city mourners rose like a bitter gale, but within these quarters there was only a suffocating, ringing silence. Eurydice sat rigidly on her high cedar chair, her spine a column of frozen iron. She had already lost her firstborn to the treacherous currents of her own realm. As she stared into the dim, flickering corners of the room, a desperate, fierce vow took root. She would not let the crown become an immediate death sentence for her remaining sons. The monarchy had crushed Alexander, but she would turn that weight into a lethal weapon before the dawn. Her grief was entirely suspended, frozen in the cold aftermath of the council room. She was consumed not by tears, but by a towering, white-hot rage. The vision of her eldest son lying on the limestone floor, his blood pooling around the dais, remained as sharp and vivid as ever. But her inner instincts absolutely forbade her to weep or moan. The very thought of performance mourning irritated her, grating against her raw nerves. With teeth bared and a fire burning in her chest, she wanted to roar. She wanted to violently bite and tear apart whoever was responsible for this slaughter before she would ever allow herself to break down and sob. Beside her, Eurydice sat slumped on a low chest. Her bridal finery, the delicate silks she had worn to the royal festival, torn at the shoulder. She stared down at her hands as if they belonged to a stranger, the phantom weight of her new gold wedding band suddenly feeling like a brand of heavy iron. "Please tell me you did not know, my daughter," Eurydice whispered, her mind desperately swirling to pinpoint the architect of her firstborn's assassination. Her voice cracked like dry parchment in the heavy silence. "Absolutely not." Eurydice snapped her head up, her eyes wide and glassy with shock. "I swear to the gods." Ptolemy gave no hint. He toasted to Alexander's health right before the dancer stepped out onto the floor. Then he asked me to step outside so gently, he was obviously in high anxiety, so I pressed him. He told me he knew of Alexander's plan to systematically purge the internal factions aligned against the crown, and that he was at the very top of his execution list. Ptolemy said he did not want to die. I told him that Eurydice's mother had already talked to Alexander, begging him to reconsider and find an alternative way to ease the tension. And then, moments later, the screams started. The rest, you know. Eurydice turned slowly, her expression hardened by grief. Your marriage was supposed to be the anchor. It was a calculated maneuver meant to bind his ambition firmly to our bloodline. But to strike down the king at his own festival. She shook her head, the reality refusing to settle. We do not have the facts. We cannot verify if Ptolemy truly directed the steal. But still, the timing is unthinkable. Did I kiss the man who was sharpening a blade for my brother's heart? The thought struck Eurydice with a terrifying, blinding clarity. The tender gentleman who had held her in their marriage bed hours ago was practically gone, replaced by a monster she didn't recognize, assuming Ptolemy was truly the architect. The romance, the vows, the happily ever after she had foolishly believed in, all of it might have been a calculated lie. A sob caught in her throat. She opened her mouth to pour out her terror to her mother, to weep for the brother whose blood was still warm on the flagstones, but a sudden icy resolve seized her. No, her eldest brother was dead, and Ptolemy had already ruthlessly claimed the regency over young Perdiccas. If she succumbed to the weeping princess inside her, she would be crushed. Did Ptolemy do it? Mother believes he did. Eurydice gritted her teeth, forcing the tears back. She swallowed the self-pity, burying the heartbroken girl beneath a wall of raw, defensive anger, absolutely needed for survival. She required courage now, not grief. Eurydice placed a cold hand on her daughter's trembling hair, misinterpreting her silence for despair. Think, Eurydice. Who else stands to gain from this chaos? Even if Ptolemy didn't strike the match, whoever did just cleared his exact path to power. Is that merely a coincidence? If it is a miracle to him. He saved his own life from an executioner's block and automatically ascended to be the regent over Perdiccas. We must mourn in public, but in private we must find a wolf bigger than the Macedonian court and army to protect us. Is there anyone else who could have ordered the assassination instead of Ptolemy, mother? Eurydice asked, her voice steadying as her mind raced. Brother Alexander made a massive miscalculation. He stepped deep into southern territory, rising the furious attention of Thebes. Not only that, he completely depleted the royal treasury and lost the trust of the court, ending up so desperate that he threw this theatrical political maneuver, a royal festival we didn't even have the luxury to pay for. He made a purge list, and every enemy within this court, and across the borders, targeted him for elimination. Who is to say it wasn't another lord afraid of execution? Are the Illyrians? Pausanias? The Persians? The tyrant of Thessaly? Ptolemy is not the only option, is he? The Queen Mother fell silent for a long moment, the complexity of the trap settling over her. Perdiccas, standing pale beside the hearth, spoke up, his voice trembling but focused. Whoever did this, the brutal truth is that Alexander is dead and Ptolemy is regent now. We have to survive, and we need to prepare for what comes next. If the one who killed my brother did it to erase the Argead line completely, they will come for me next. And after me, Philip. They will eliminate all of us if we do not act. Eurydice's gaze fell upon her youngest, Philip. His eyes lacked the softness of childhood. They were already narrowed, scanning the tight dimensions of the private chamber, as if it were a tactical battlefield. Mother. Philip's voice was low, cutting through the heavy air like a whetted blade. Do you truly believe Ptolemy killed my brother? Ptolemy and his financial backers were the hands I suspected first, Eurydice replied, her fingers locking like stone claws onto the polished armrests of her chair. But now, in the shadow of this ruin, I'm no longer certain who held the blade. There are too many variables. It all depends on how we look at it, whether we take the narrow view of this palace court or the wider view of the world outside. One thing is certain. We stand at the absolute critical point of survival, both for the Argead dynasty and for the kingdom itself. Eurydice looked up, her expression hardening as she smoothed the torn silk of her bridal gown. Now we have all become their prey, isn't that right, mother? Every single one of us, including Ptolemy himself, along with the court factions and the citizens altogether. If Ptolemy did this, he did it to save his own skin. I felt it when he spoke to me, when he said he was terrified of having his head cut off by Alexander. It was real. It wasn't fake, and it wasn't a performance. But if he did all of this just to breathe, what is the use when his life is once again hanging on the brink of total annihilation? I only hope it was worth it to him. I will find out the truth, mother. I will know if my husband held the steel or if the wolves came from elsewhere. Queen Mother leaned forward, her voice a low, fierce rasp that vibrated in the small room. But you must look deeper. Philip. The true killer is not a single man. The true killer is that throne. It is an altar of ambition that ruthlessly consumes its own children. What becomes of Perdiccas? Philip asked, his voice sharp and unblinking. He is king, yet he is a puppet. Beside the hearth, the 17-year-old heir let out a ragged breath, his face twisting into a bitter, humiliated mask. He did not dispute his younger brother's words, because the brutal truth of them cut straight to the bone. Perdiccas knew exactly what lay ahead. He would ascend to the throne as a mere decoration, a boy king stripped of power, sitting on an island of gold and blood, while Ptolemy's massive hands held the real reins of the state. The cruel irony of it was suffocating. Had Perdiccas been a mere infant, a regency would be an absolute blameless necessity of statecraft. But he was 17, far from a babe in arms, yet not old enough to command the absolute authority born of years in the saddle, nor seasoned enough to navigate the jagged geopolitical maneuvers and cutthroat military tactics required to command the Macedonian vanguard on his own. He was trapped in the worst possible orbit, mature enough to feel the full sting of his degradation, but powerless to break the orbit of the predator who had just claimed his world. Eurydice turned to them, her sweeping gaze a searing brand of political wisdom that locked onto Eurydice, Perdiccas, and Philip in turn. Look at the ground beneath your feet. This kingdom is built upon a shallow grave, she stated, her voice vibrating with a terrifying ancestral authority. They struck down your brother, and they will not stop there. They will kill Perdiccas next, then they will come for you, Philip, and they will consume you as well, Eurydice. Do you know why they struck so boldly under our own roof? It is the blood running in your veins. To the lowland traditionalists, I'm nothing but the Illyrian woman. My father was a mountain chieftain and outsider. To the arrogant barons of this court, you are all half-bloods, an existential stain on their ancient pride. They loathe the very idea of an Illyrian's grandchildren, holding the scepter of Macedon, and they will tear this house apart to wash that blood from the throne. And the others? Philip asked, his mind already calculating. The sons of the second queen, Gygia? Gygia, Eurydice spat the name. She is of the pure Macedonian nobility. Her sons, Archelaus, Aridaeus, and Menelaus, carry the blood the court craves. They are safe for now. They are the weapons the traditionalist nobles intend to use against us. This was Philip's inheritance, a century of anarchy where the crown was a death sentence. He watched as Perdiccas ascended, knowing his brother stood in a tightening vice. To the west, the Illyrian king Bardalus waited like a mountain lion. If Perdiccas failed to hold the frontier or fell to a courtier's blade, the weight of the dynasty would collapse onto Philip's young shoulders. To survive, Eurydice needed an immediate lifeline. She called for her scribe and a roll of papyrus. There was one man, an Athenian who had once been like an adopted son to her late husband, Amyntas III. He was a man who saw the world purely as a structural chessboard. With a trembling but resolute hand, she began to dictate to General Iphicrates. It was more than an official letter. It was a desperate defensive play from a cornered queen to the only foreign commander capable of deploying naval weight to secure their lives. The master of the ledgers? While the royal family bartered their suspicions in the stagnant heat of the inner chambers, Ptolemy of Aloros retreated to the palace Scriptorium. He had not removed his formal festival robes, though the hem was damp from the midnight grass of the courtyard. Before him lay the heavy leather ledgers of the state treasury, unrolled, blank, and terrifyingly hollow. The young king's reckless march into Thessaly had not just cost lives, it had structurally emptied the vaults. The state could not pay the palace guard by the next new moon, let alone finance or multi-front defense against the encroaching frontiers. Ptolemy ground his teeth, dipping a reed pen into thick, black ink. He didn't have the luxury of grief, nor did he have the time to defend his reputation to the whispering barons. He had a state to preserve. Let them call me a regicide in the markets, Ptolemy thought, his hand moving across the parchment with aggressive, clinical speed. A dead king leaves a vacuum, but an empty treasury leaves a grave. If I cannot buy iron from our own soil, I will sell the mountains to foreign docks to buy us breath. He addressed the first scroll to the Bodarks of Thebes, specifically to Pelopidas. He did not write with the submission of a supplicant, but with the stark, calculating logic of an experienced diplomat. To Pelopidas of Thebes, the ink ran smooth. The provocative vanguard of Alexander II has been removed by the hands of the gods. The northern threat to your Thessalian hegemony is dead. Macedon desires no southern empire. We desire a stabilized border. I ask for an immediate diplomatic shield, recognize the regency of Perdiccas III, check the ambitions of the tyrant of Phaerae, and we shall guarantee the security of your northern flank. He sealed it with the royal wax, then immediately unrolled a second sheet of crisp Egyptian papyrus. This one was directed to the Prytanis of Athens, the naval superpower that was always hungry, always desperate for the one resource the lowlands possessed in absolute abundance. To the Assembly of Athens, Ptolemy wrote, his eyes narrowing in the torchlight. The Argead crown is prepared to grant your shipwrights exclusive, unhindered access to the elite timber reserves of the Strymon and the Pierian forests. We will fill your docks with the finest ash and pine for your triremes. In return, Athens will establish an immediate maritime trade credit, prepaid in silver talents directly to the Peloport authorities. He struck his personal signet ring into the hot red wax, sealing the deal. He was systematically selling the timber of the mountains to fill the empty vaults of the core, using international commerce to artificially solvent a bankrupt kingdom, before the local armies realized the state was broke. He handed the wet scrolls to his most trusted courier, a man who had ridden for his father-in-law Amyntas. If these letters do not reach the southern ports before the news of the assassination breeds an invasion, Ptolemy commanded in a low, tight whisper, we won't even have enough silver left to bury the king. Right as if the fangs are at your heels. To be continued in episode 09, Spare Blood. Alexein, A Great Argead Saga Volume 1. Telesias, The War Dance. A new episode every single day. We are dropping a new episode every day until the epic conclusion of Volume 1. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 5 to 15-minute hit of cinematic historical drama, perfect for your daily plunge into antiquity. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full saga now. Bookmark Volume 1, Telesias playlist. Bookmark Volume 1, Divine Oracle playlist. Subscribe to follow the rise of the Argead dynasty. Thumbs up to help push our vanguard through the algorithm's gauntlet. Comment below. While Eurydice warns Philip that their half-blood ancestry makes them targets for the traditionalist lowland nobility, Ptolemy is secretly bartering Macedon's timber to Athens to fill the empty vaults. Who do you think holds the strategic advantage in this fractured court, the cornered royal bloodline or the pragmatist regent? Let us know your breakdowns below.